So today I'm going to be planting some buffalo grass. This is a warm season native grass actually to North America that was mostly found in the prairies and has become an option for turf in some cases now, just because of a lot of areas needing something more resilient, a lot of areas that cool season grasses just don't tolerate the kind of heat that we're having and the dry conditions that we're having in some areas. So I have one plot left out here that I had left for buffalo grass, and I'm going to be planting it today since it is a warm season grass. I was waiting for it to get warmer, and it's about mid-June now, so I'm going to be seeding this today and show you how that process goes. Quickly, let's talk about some of the pros and cons with buffalo grass. So it is obviously a warm season, so it is going to be much more tolerant of the heat and actually prefer the heat of the summer. We're not really used to that in cool season lawn land here. So the other thing is that it is cold tolerant. So that's the thing with warm season, that the reason why a lot of times we can't grow those grasses as far north is just because they die off in the winter time as far as our cold temperatures go. But this one is more cold tolerant. It's going to be something that doesn't need a whole lot of maintenance. I'm interested to find out sort of the look of everything compared to some of my other turf here. Cons wise that you could say would be, because of that warm season grass, growing it in a more northern climate, it will be more of a brown color going into the springtime when all of your other grasses might green up a little faster. This is warm season, so it will take longer to get going as far as the color goes. Other thing would be is that it's not extremely shade tolerant, so if you have a shady area that you're looking for something that's more low maintenance, I would go more with a fine fescue. That's what I have down in our shade testing areas, and that has been really good down there. Not a whole lot of maintenance to it or fertilizers or anything that I've done with it, and it does really well. So first off, with any good lawn renovation, if you want to do your best to get rid of what is there and start over, you need to spray this out. So I sprayed this out a few weeks ago now, and there are just a couple of little green plants coming back in here right at this point, but I'm about to break up this soil today, and these are so minor that I'm not really worried about that at this point. We have this looking like straw here. I'm going to take my mower and scalp this down as low as it goes, and then I'm going to actually break up the soil. It's been dry for a few days now, so this top layer of the soil is pretty crusty. I want to make sure that I have a good seed bed for the seed. Now, because this grass was so thin, I didn't use my bagger today, but usually I would use a bagger and pick up all these clippings and stuff, especially if it was more on the thick side, as far as you don't want all of that debris going back down on here. But I didn't have my bagger handy, and this was really, really thin already, so I didn't really need that today. A few options here for breaking up the soil. I'm not really trying to till down too far and bring up a bunch of weed seeds up to the top of the surface, but I do need to break this soil just because of how hard it is on top, and make sure I have a good seed bed. So you can use something like this, you know, just a little garden claw to break up the soil here, or if you just had a little small soil cultivator of some kind. Sometimes if your soil is soft enough, you can just use a garden rake and really get pretty aggressive with it. But whatever you do, just make sure it's not rock hard soil on top. It's going to be pretty hard to plant into, and you want to make sure you have good soils. If you don't have that option, you could also try to break this as much as you could and then bring in a small amount of fresh topsoil on top. That way you have a good start to your seed. But there's many different options here, so whatever you choose, just want to make sure you create a good seed bed here. Okay, I have this nice and leveled out now. I also did a quick roll on it. I don't have any weight in that roller right now, but just because of how loose and silty, sandy my soil is here, it needs to be put into place a little bit to keep it there. If you have a heavier soil, you might not need to do that after you do your leveling, but it's not going to hurt anything if you don't have any real weight in there. It's just to slightly compress all that soil together. Now I'm just going to put my seed down. 2 to 3 pounds per 1,000 square feet of seed. Now obviously I have a very small area here, so I'm not even going to get out my spreader. I'm just going to do this by hand. It's a lot easier in smaller areas like this to just broadcast by hand and make sure to get good even coverage on it. With warm season grasses, you also have the benefit of spreading. So even if I'm slightly thin on a spot like this, so we'll actually spread by stolons up on the ground. So we'll spread across here and make a thicker turf as it starts to mature. So not that you don't want to pay attention to your seeding rate, you definitely do anytime you're doing seeding. But today in a small area like this, I'm just going to hand broadcast and do my best to get some good even coverage here. At this stage too, if you wanted to just do a light top dressing of some topsoil on there, you could do that, but the issue becomes a lot of times it's hard to get a very light layer on here. You don't want more than about a ½ an inch over top of that seed. So right now what I'm going to do is get my roller and I will roll this back in. That's going to help whatever's still sitting up onto the surface get pushed right down into the soil, and then you have good seed to soil contact. I'm also going to cover this, and I'll show you that here in a second. Now would also be a good time to get some starter fertilizer down on here if you need some. I don't actually have any on hand today, so I'm gonna have to go to the store and get some, but I can add this the next day or so, next couple days. It's not going to matter if it's done exactly at this moment. But now I'm gonna use a straw blanket over top of this to help keep some of the moisture there, help keep the seed in place just in case of any storms or anything like that. If you've been watching the channel at all, you know that I've been using these a lot with great success. So same thing, we're just gonna roll this out on this plot, get it covered, and start the watering. So now you want to keep this consistently watered until you get good germination. For a small area, maybe you have a small area like this, sometimes you can just do that by hand, otherwise sprinklers set up. And for those of you who want to try to water during the day too, so that it doesn't dry out during the middle of the day, there are some timers out there that you can just hook up to your house. So if you're at work and you're away and you're wondering how to try to get this water during the middle of the day, that would be a way to try to do it. I have a DIY sprinkler system that you can set up that I've done in many renovations. You can check that out. For me, I have a zone set up here for irrigation. I knew I was going to be planting this, but it's also not too bad for me to just come over here and hit this with water a couple times a day with a hose and just hand water. It's not too terrible to do that either if I have the time to do it. Main thing is you want to keep it from drying out till you start to see good germination. You can start to back your water off at that point. That's how you plant some buffalo grass. You'll want to stay tuned so you see how this all turns out and how it matures as we go along through the season here and into next season as well. Thank you so much for watching today. We'll see you next time.